University of Milan Bicocca, that is not the Studi, it's another, it's Bicocca. Professor Cristiano ALESSANDRO, Professor Cristiano ALESSANDRO will talk about step-to-step covariation amongst quadriceps and hamstring muscle activity following ACL rupture during locomotion. The stage is yours.
Okay. First of all, thank you for the invitation. It is great. It's my first time here. I was told that it is work in progress, so things that are not well established yet. And in fact, I'm going to talk about wrong assumption and wrong hypothesis. Okay? And so I want to have your opinion on those. So first of all, let's start from the basis. We know what an ACL is. It's one of the main strainer in the knee. And we also know, unfortunately, that it's very common for athletes to rupture the ACL, and it's also very common to rupture it again, and it's also very common to develop long-term disabilities like osteoarthritis. What we don't know is why this happens. So the ACL, everybody talks about the biomechanical role of the ACL. We just said that it's a restrainer of the tibia with respect to the femur. Many people don't say that this also provides ligament sensory afferents to the central nervous system. And so the idea could be that after rupturing the ACL, basically the sensory afferents change and therefore motor control change. And this might be aberrant in terms of the force loading within the knee. In human subjects, and in particular in not only human subject, actually in the past also in cats, as you can see in the slides, we know that by loading the ACL in an anesthetized animal, we have reflexive contraction of the hamstring muscles. This has been replicated in humans, and more recently, it is also been shown that by loading the ACL in anesthetized humans, not only the hamstrings actually have a reflexive response, but many other muscles in the leg. Now the problem is that after we rupture the ACL, we interrupt this sensory reflex. We reconstruct the ACL and we reconstruct the biomechanical role of the ACL, but we do not reconstruct the sensory efforts. So the hypothesis that we have is that these sensory deficits might alter muscle coordination, which might create aberrant stress and strains within the knee. So essentially, we wanted to study this problem, and how we did it? We did it with an hypothesis in mind. From biomechanics, we know that quadriceps are antagonistic to the ACL, so essentially activation of the quadricep muscles pull anteriorly the tibia, which load the ACL. Whereas the hamstring muscles do the opposite, are agonists to the ACL. So activation of the hamstring muscle pull the tibia posteriorly and therefore unload the ACL. So essentially the idea is that during activation of the quadricep muscles, we have force loading on the ACL, and this might create a reflexive behavior on the hamstring muscles. This makes sense because if we look at quadricep and hamstring muscles during locomotion, they are very correlated to each other. So we know that during the stride, during locomotion, there is activation of the quads, and contemporarily there is activation of the hamstring. It's not really clear whether this is true also on a step-to-step basis. So if that was the case, if on a step-to-step basis there is a change in the quadricep muscles, this would change the load of the ACL, and therefore this would change the hamstring activation too. So in other words, in every subject, in theory, quadricep and hamstring muscle would be correlated on a stride-to-stride basis. So the hypothesis would be that in a ACL subject, this correlation, this covariation actually is lost. And we would see something like this. Okay, so this is our main hypothesis. So what we did is to invite ACL patients to the lab. We asked them to locomote. We recorded the EMG, bipolar EMG, during locomotion. And then we consider the period where both quadricep and hamstring muscles are activated. So basically from heel strike to mid-stance. On that, in that time window, we computed root mean square, and then we can compute the scatter plot that I showed before. So So in that, this is real data now. We have vastus medialis for one subject and semitendinous on the y-axis, and each dot is basically straight, where you have in the x-axis the root mean square of one muscle, on the y-axis the root mean square of the other axis. And then we can compute now the Pearson correlation on a straight-to-straight basis. Okay, and we want to compare it between quadriceps, between ACL and control subject. So I'm going to present the results in these slides. These are bar plots. You will have on the y-axis the correlation coefficients between different muscle pairs. The one in red are the muscle pair between quadriceps and hamstring. So we have vastus medialis and biceps femoris. We have vastus medialis semitendinosus, and so on and so forth. So let's start from the wrong assumption. So the wrong assumption was that in healthy subject there would be high covariation between quadriceps and hamstring, and that's not true. In fact, we have no covariation between quadriceps and hamstring in controlled healthy subjects. Now, of course, we have covariation between the synergistic muscles, so all the biceps, all the hamstring together, and all the vastus medialis and lateralis together. Let's see what happens now in ACL subjects. VL, VLST, essentially there is no change compared to control subject. Now let's go to the other. We have an increase, not a decrease, of covariation between vastus medialis and biceps femoris, and vastus medialis and semitendinosus, which is even significant. No change for the synergistic muscles. So we have an increased covariation following an ACL injury. We have no idea why this happens. We have a few hypotheses that we can discuss together. So, first idea. ACL afferents might mediate the reciprocal inhibition between quadriceps and hamstring. So, if there is no ACL afferents anymore, there is less reciprocal inhibition, and therefore less covariation. Second possibility, there is a unique drive that goes to the quadriceps and hamstring, which is mediated in an inverse way by ACL afferent. So there is no ACL afferent anymore, and now we have more covariation between Q and H. Third hypothesis is that there is supraspinal change that basically couple these two muscle groups together. Okay, so I should have 30 seconds, so I think it's fine. I would just like to, let's go directly here, to thank everyone, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Cristiano. Who is solving the puzzle? Yeah.
More questions, not solving. So, what kind of sensory afferent would that be? Would be one B's?
So there are a few different kind of receptors in the ACL. There are Pacini, there are Ruffini.
Okay, so tactile.
There are also free nerve endings, so pain. There shouldn't be pain in these subjects because it's like 1 year after surgery, after reconstructive surgery. But mainly it should be about the strain on the force on the ACL.
Okay. And maybe, so what you see is increased co-contraction of biceps femoris and basti. Is that they get it right?
It's not exactly co-contraction. So the co-contraction, you would measure co-contraction during a single contraction and see whether the two muscles actually work together. This is always the case in between Q and H, both in healthy subject and in ACL subject. What changes is how these two muscles covary on a straight-to-straight basis.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Frederick Terry, University Bochum. Thank you. I was wondering where the grafts were done for the ACL reconstructions. Were they hamstring or
patella? So we try to keep the patients homogeneous. So we have most of them are quadriceps tendon.
Last week.
Yeah, maybe follow up. So also the knees, are they stable or is there more laxity so that there could be also other sensory input from the knee joint and the capsule that affects
So that's another,
control?
that's a good point. So again, try to uniformize the sample. We recruited subjects who didn't have any meniscal tear, for example. So this is a subject who had the first time ACL rupture, and it was an isolated rupture. So now within this subject we also had questionnaires in terms of how they felt about their knees, and they felt, according to these questionnaires, more or less alright in terms of stability.
Cristiano, thank you very much. Just one quick question you can answer later on. How was the activation when they disrupt the ACL?
You mean
With that.
in that specific moment? We always hope that they have something while they are